Hi, everyone. You may have been reading or hearing about the criticism that Donald Trump has directed to the Federal Reserve and its leader, Chair Jerome Powell. So now's a good time to explain what the Federal Reserve does and why this debate is important. The Fed, as it's called, is a government agency and it's the central bank of the United States. As the central bank, the Fed has the power to strongly influence interest rates, lower or higher, or to keep them steady. Americans borrow a lot of money, so changes in interest rates affect us a lot. Higher interest rates will make loans more expensive, and lower interest rates will make loans cheaper. Now, you might be wondering, why would the Fed ever want to raise interest rates to make loans expensive? And the answer is that the Fed pushes interest rates higher to fight high inflation. You might remember from COVID inflation how the prices of everything from groceries to cars to haircuts were going up quickly in a short period of time. It's pretty painful financially to deal with that. By pushing interest rates higher, the Fed is trying to motivate us to spend less. Their logic is, if people spend less money because they have to pay higher interest rates, then prices won't rise as fast because there's less demand for goods and services sold by businesses. And then inflation will cool off. But there's a big risk with the strategy. If the Fed pushes interest rates too high, and if our spending drops too much, then we might have a recession. Recession happens when lower spending leads to lower profits at businesses, and then businesses will start to, unfortunately, fire people and stop their hiring. And this could force unemployment higher. So the Fed is constantly trying to balance between keeping prices stable and avoiding high inflation, and also to keep the economy from falling into recession, and which leads to higher unemployment. So the Fed is responsible for a big part of our financial well-being, which is why I think we have to really understand how it works. And on top of that, it's also extremely powerful. Neither the president nor Congress can overturn the decision by the Fed to change or hold interest rates steady. This allows the Fed to go against what the Congress and president may decide. For example, if Congress and president decide to borrow money and spend that money, this could potentially push inflation higher, but then the Fed, at its own discretion, can push interest rates higher to fight that high inflation, and this will dampen hiring. So politicians tend not to like that. So its political independence plus its power to manage interest rates makes the Fed like a fourth branch of government, like the Supreme Court of Finance. This leads to what's frustrating Donald Trump when it comes to the Fed. Let me quote one of his social media posts here. This would be a perfect time for Fed Chairman Jerome Powell to cut interest rates. Energy prices are down, interest rates are down, inflation is down, even eggs are down 69%, and jobs are up. A big win for America. Cut interest rates, Jerome, and stop playing politics. The Fed is supposed to be a nonpartisan institution, so why doesn't the Fed just lower interest rates? The main reason here is that there may be new inflation pressure coming soon from tariffs. Tariffs are a tax on imports. There are arguments for and against tariffs, which I can get into in a future video. But one of the potential problems with tariffs is that they can push inflation higher if consumers end up paying the tariff tax. No one really knows how much tariffs will affect inflation, if at all. But the Fed wants to hold interest rates steady until it has clearer evidence of whether or not inflation rises. Donald Trump, of course, is convinced that tariffs will not cause inflation, so he wants the Fed to lower interest rates now and for the economy to get a boost from the benefit of cheaper loans. Now, there's two things about this that make it interesting. First is that although Trump does not have the ability to overturn Fed decisions, the law does give him the right to fire the Fed chair, but only if he can prove he has cause. The term cause has never been formally defined or ever invoked, but recently the Supreme Court gave a preliminary opinion that the president cannot just remove the Fed chair. The Supreme Court did not go into more detail, and its final decision and explanation are still pending. However, This temporary legal roadblock led Trump to find a different way to get what he wants. Um, the Fed has been renovating its headquarters building in Washington, D.C., and Trump has claimed that it's mismanaged the renovation costs and pushed them too high. And he says that this gives him cause to remove Fed Chair Powell. The reason that he gives is that the Fed is supposed to send all its profits that it earns from managing interest rates to the Treasury Department. And by pushing the cost of its renovation too high, Trump is claiming that it's essentially using and wasting money that should have gone to the Treasury Department instead. Now, if Trump is successful, in my opinion, it's likely that the global financial community, like investors and bankers, will be incredibly nervous about that because despite past mistakes like the COVID inflation, the Fed does have credibility among many investors and banks and others in the financial community as a powerful and independent institution that's focused on preventing inflation. And if the financial community becomes alarmed at what happens next because they just don't know what's going to happen next, they could start selling assets like stocks and bonds in massive amounts. And if this happens, and of course it's debatable and it's not sure to happen, it could create a financial crisis. So now actually is the perfect time to ask, well, who should manage inflation? Should it be the president? Should it be the Fed? How is Congress involved? Or maybe should it be the people ourselves who manage inflation and the level of interest rates and unemployment that we find in an economy? So you can check out my book, Guidebook to the Fed, on Amazon. It goes into more details about how it works and what the nature of the debate is. And it also explains some basics about economics and the financial system and accounting that I think will be very useful. It's fun and concise, so I think you'll enjoy it. Thanks for joining me on this video, and see you on the next one.